Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. So, today, what we are talking about is how to get you from GI distress at any race or on your training in your training plan to being symptom free on both race day and also on those long runs. And I'm also going to tell you how I did what I did to overcome GI distress as well. So, we're essentially talking about gut health for sports performance today. So you might know someone, or you might be that someone that has dealt with GI distress in the past, and you maybe have experienced gut symptoms on race day or in training on those long runs. And you know the ever so common called runner's trot that, if you, especially if you know that and you've experienced it in the past, you know how frustrating and also potentially embarrassing it can be if you don't make it to the bathroom in time, or if you have to spend each aid station in the bathroom. Another scenario where GI health can be problematic for people as well that often have come to see me for other, for irritable bowel or something like that is something that's very common. There's a few common scenarios, especially if you've dealt with a lot of GI related issues of like bloating, maybe periods of like constipation or really loose stools, maybe even like diarrhea. This is a medical kind of healthcare podcast. So yeah, we're talking about it today. I actually work a lot with gut health. I look at a lot of people's stool panels. This is something that I do quite a bit. And one of the things that is always hard, especially when an athlete comes in that has been dealing with GI related issues, is when, I'm talking specifically about things like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, or others that affect the GI tract, is when they're worried to go out, to go hiking with people, or to do certain things in their day because they're worried about not being close to a bathroom and when that next bowel movement is going to show up. That's not a very fun scenario, especially when like you might opt not to go hiking, or you might opt not to go to the mall with, your family, or you might opt not to go do something because you know that there's not going to be a bathroom around and you're not sure if something's going to happen with your gut. That's not a very fun scenario to be in. So, and I know that most of you, especially if you've been in the runner space for a while, you've heard that some of the ways that you can help to reduce runners GI distress or trot or whatever is to maybe lower the fiber that you eat the day before. Even though those are really good for gut health, maybe you've been told to lower fiber before those long run days. Or maybe you've heard to try like a certain GI related diet, like a low FODMAP diet or something similar. Heck, a lot of people are told, hey, you should just try a probiotic. And maybe you tried those things and maybe they worked for a short time and then maybe they didn't. And now it's still problematic and it's still a problem you keep having. You still end up going from, toilet to toilet on race day at each aid station, and it's causing a lot of problems. Now, maybe that's not your scenario. Maybe you are in a different sport. So you're not a runner, or maybe you have just different symptoms. Other GI related issues can be things like heartburn, especially if you get heartburn frequently and you know that there's just something not quite right there. Also, acid reflux is another one. If you're taking any type of medication for those, that's also going to potentially cause problems down the road as far as protein breakdown, but also B12 and some other related things. So heartburn is not just a simple thing that you want to just take a medication for and let it go. Another case is like if you get bloated all the time or have abdominal pain or cramping, and especially that bloating, if it's starting to make you look like you're super pregnant by the end of the day, that's a problem. Another scenario might be having psoriasis, acne, eczema, or rosacea on the skin. Those are all scenarios where that is potentially an issue going on with the GI tract that is starting to cause some inflammation that's causing symptoms on the skin. Other scenarios of GI related things that may be more prevalent or relatable to you might be micronutrient deficiencies. If you can't absorb nutrients from your gut and you're just passing them through, that's going to be a problem, especially if you are an athlete and you have a high amount of need for those micronutrients, right? You can also see episode 3 if you're not sure what we're talking about. You may also have constipation, or you may have loose stools often. Both of those scenarios are going to be problematic for many different reasons. Maybe you have a history of going on antibiotics and you were on them for a long time, maybe as a child. Maybe you had like tonsillitis a lot of times, or maybe you had some other type of ear infection or something that, in those first 5 years of life, you were on antibiotics a lot. Also, in that history of things, if you were born via C-section and if you weren't breastfed, those scenarios actually can set you up for GI related issues down the road. Also, if you had food poisoning and if you had it maybe more than once and you notice that, like literally you would say this, yes, that one time I got food poisoning and my gut was never the same. Ooh, that is a scenario that you definitely want to deal with. Or maybe you are in the scenario where you have autoimmune disease that affects the GI tract. There are so many reasons why athletes, but also runners, can have GI distress on race day. So many. But let's say you're not a runner and you're in a different sport and you're wondering about your gut health. We're going to talk about all of that for everybody. It's not just about runners. So let's chat a little bit about my experience with GI distress. I promise I'll keep it short because you're probably more curious about your stuff. But I did say that I'm going to show you how I overcame it. My experience with GI distress is, number one, I had a race where I was fueling with very popular things like gels, and that over time, like I got through the bike and was doing okay. But as soon as I got off the bike and into the run, I pretty much spent every single aid station in the bathroom. Like, oof, that's really rough. It doesn't feel good. It really doesn't make you feel like you can push and perform. It's just a really icky, that like bubbly gut feeling. And then it's no fun. It's not a great place to be. So I worked after that on figuring out what was going on with my gut. I worked after that on figuring out what type of fuel sources really worked well for me. And that's part of what I do working with athletes, is making sure that their fuel sources are actually working with their bodies and not causing the potential to have GI distress, but also making sure that it makes sense and that it's not potentially causing further dehydration and faster dehydration throughout the day. There's a lot of things that go into just fueling that can be causing GI distress, but also be potentially, even if you don't have GI symptoms, it could be leaving some of your performance on the table, which is not cool. Another scenario that I wanted to tell you about is basically my journey with gut health. So when I was a kid, I had acne. It wasn't that bad. Most kids do. But I didn't want it to be there. And my mom understood. I mean, being a teenager is it's a hard life. Anyway, we tried all the things. We tried all the creams, went to the dermatologist, did all the things. And eventually he was like, well, the thing that happens with acne is it can be a bacterial issue on the skin. Imagine that. So I went on antibiotics, and I was on those antibiotics periodically for a while. And after that, I started getting migraines. And then after that, I started really having issues with endometriosis, which endometriosis is where maybe cysts form on the ovaries, or endometriosis is also where there's an issue with the uterine lining and where cells can literally grow outside of the uterus. And that can cause a lot of pain, can cause a lot of pelvic inflammatory conditions. And they can grow in many places. So like any time when that time of the month comes up for your period or your cycle, you don't just have pain and cramping in the uterus, you have it elsewhere as well, wherever those cells are. It's a very inflammatory condition. So I was dealing with that. And then as I went into college, it was somewhat stressful, just being a new college student and trying to figure it all out. And that is the time when I started getting a lot of stomach pain when I was eating certain foods, but I didn't know which foods. So I just didn't want to eat. I lost 15 pounds and just overall struggled a lot. And it took a long time. That journey started in 2008 to 2010, and it took me until recently. So 2021, 2020, 21, for me to finally see like barely any pain with my periods. And it's, just, I still get migraines periodically, but I don't get them nearly as much anymore. And my GI health is so much better. But it's a journey, right? And throughout that process, I saw multiple different doctors. And it's where I learned that, especially on these health journeys, like that's a decade of working on my health. And what I learned is that, keep this in mind as well. Like I was going through a lot of different doctors. So I worked with them, like one doctor for a period of time, and they helped me up to the point where they could. And then I moved on to the next one. And that was my process. That was my journey of getting healthier and getting some of these chronic things under control. What happens is a lot of times people come to a doctor and they just expect them to be able to fix the problem. And the thing is that some doctors can do that, but there's also a lot more that could be going on. Like there could be some emotional pieces that you need to deal with. There could be past trauma that you need to deal with. There could be so many different things going on that are correlating to what's happening in the body. And it may just take time of peeling back those layers to ultimately get those answers that you're looking for. So I share that story because I want you to just remember that your gut health is a root. It is the root of a lot of health related processes going on in the body. And I want you to remember that if you are at a place where you're like, I got to start working on some of these things, be prepared that it's going to be a journey, and it's your journey. So it's going to look a lot different than somebody else's. Like literally your friend or family member might have an entirely different journey because they have an entirely different set of experiences. They have an entirely different set of things going on in their body. So this journey is going to be specific to you. And maybe you're here and it literally is a simple fix. Like, hey, let's change what you're fueling with, and boom, it's better. Or maybe it's going to be a little bit of a longer journey, and we're going to have to work on helping you with just reestablishing and working on your gut. But here's the thing, and this is where a lot of issues come from, is maybe and when it comes to fixing the gut. So you've heard my story, you know where we're at. The problem is that a lot of athletes and people don't get to the root cause. So for example, my examples above where I said, you're told you need to try a probiotic, just try a probiotic, just see if it helps. Or maybe you need to eat more or less fiber depending on what's going on for the day, or try a certain type of diet. I will say this, for a lot of my pre-race recommendations, it is to keep fiber low. It's to eat really simple, easy to digest foods in the body so that on race day, you're not going to have any problems. That is definitely a thing. However, as you go throughout your training, you should be able to go on long runs and not have necessarily like GI issues. Sometimes you're going to get caught off guard and it just is what it is, but your gut should not be a problem for you all the time. The thing is too, is all of those different types of scenarios where you're trying a different type of diet, or you're just throwing a probiotic in randomly just to see what happens, that doesn't get to the root cause, because in those scenarios, you literally have no idea where or what the problem is. You also don't know if potentially it's a specific food that's causing the issue. You don't know if it's an inflammatory issue or immune issue or a digestion issue in the stomach with digestive enzymes. In both of those scenarios, we're looking at something like you have no idea what's causing it. So for example, when it comes to leaky gut and food sensitivities and digestive enzymes and whether your digestive system is actually working and all of those things, there's a few things that you want to keep in mind when it comes to the gut. And here's your takeaways. Okay. So number one is with leaky gut and intestinal permeability, what is happening is you have, let's picture it, make fists with your hands. And I want you to put them right next to each other side by side. And I want you to picture each of your fists as cells in the GI tract. They are the lining of your gut. They are making that up. And what can happen is let's say you eat something inflammatory, or you get stressed and cortisol gets high, or something else happens, and that now start to kind of move your fists away from each other. If you have food or bacteria or toxic components or whatever floating through your intestines, because that lining isn't as tight together as it could be, you now can potentially have food going in between the cells, not through them. Typically, what's supposed to happen is when food gets broken down, it's supposed to get broken down into amino acids, vitamins, minerals, and all those things. And it's those things that bind to something that then brings them through the middle of the cell into the body, because the body knows, oh, I can take that, I can move it through, we're good to go. When you have something like intestinal permeability, though, you might be taking like egg that you ate that morning and it's not fully digested. So it's not broken down into its amino acids and its all different types of vitamins and minerals. Instead, it's that egg white or that yolk that's making its way in between the cells. And here's the thing, the body doesn't know what to do with that. The immune system is like 60 to 70% of your immune system is literally at the level of the gut. It's called GALT, gut associated lymphatic tissue. And basically what happens is that food makes its way and the immune system goes, I don't know what you are. So it starts to form antibodies because that's legitimately the only way that we know what to do with it. Right. So now what happens is you have these antibodies forming to this food. So that's number one, where food sensitivities can often be coming from. Number two, if you put a probiotic into that scenario, thinking that that's going to fix it, what's going to happen? Lipopolysaccharides, bacteria, that probiotic of bacteria that you just put in might not end up in the gut. It might end up in between your cells into your immune system, into your blood. Now what happens? Same thing. It causes an inflammatory response. And now you might be seeing other issues, like maybe some skin issues, or maybe some brain fog, or maybe some joint related issues or muscle issues. I mean, so many different types of things can happen because of this process. Now, another thing that I want you to remember as well is things like digestive enzymes or what's going on in your stomach can also affect this entire system too. And your stomach acid levels can affect the system as well. It's not just about the small or large intestine. It's the whole system, from whether you're too busy to eat and you're just cramming food down your mouth and you're not chewing, or if you're not stopping to like take a deep breath and rest and digest, if you're just constantly in this stressful scenario of just going, it's going to be really hard for your digestive system to be able to digest food. And as I mentioned, if you're not sure what a lipopolysaccharide is, go back to episode 2 where we talk about inflammation, and I talk about it there and why it's so critical for gut health. The other thing, and the last thing that I wanted to mention here too, is that one of the things that we've seen in studies is that any type of long endurance event, so about 4 to 5 hours or above, will leave most athletes with leaky gut. Most of you are going to heal that up within maybe a week, maybe a day to 2 days to a week. But there will be maybe many of you who go in with leaky gut, who then make it worse. And then you have a longer recovery time on the other side. Or maybe you start to see symptoms pop up of, something else is going on. The thing, and I think the biggest mistake here that people tend to make in general, is that they have a tendency to make the mistake of trying a bunch of things before they go in and get help. And just as I mentioned, like, for example, if you put a probiotic into a scenario where maybe you have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth called SIBO, or you have intestinal permeability, if you add a probiotic in, you're going to make that overgrowth worse, or you're going to end up making the problem or inflammation worse. So here is something that you can try today something new, something you can do right away that may get you started in the right direction when it comes to your gut health. Number one, you can ask your doctor about incorporating a digestive enzyme and also a supplement called L-glutamine into your daily routine for a short time. Just see if it changes anything, see if it changes how you feel, see if you notice any improvements. There's lots of things people can notice, maybe less bloating, maybe better sleep. You might notice less cramping. There's all sorts of things you might notice and experience. But on that flip side, it also could potentially make symptoms worse or better. And either way, whether it makes it worse or better, that's actually saying a lot about what's going on in the body. So most people will feel better, and that would be a really good place to start. But if by chance it feels worse, you can reach out to somebody like me or somebody else who works with GI stuff, and they can help you get that worked out. The second thing that you can do today that doesn't require you talking to your doctor or anything like that, doesn't require any supplements, is deep breathing exercises. So how I do this is I have my patients do 10 deep breaths before they eat food. So, one way you can do that is place your hand, put it on your belly, put one on your chest. And the idea of what you want to do is when you breathe in, you don't want to feel your chest rise first. You want to fill your belly with air before you feel the rest in your chest. So as you breathe in, your belly is going to push out into your hand. You're going to feel it fill up. And then as you breathe out, you're going to feel your belly button go back towards your spine. So you're like literally pushing the air out. That process of doing those deep breathing exercises, about 10 of them before eating, will help to get you into a state of rest and digest, meaning you'll be able to actually digest that food a little bit better, and you'll be less in this basically the high stress, I got to do things, I've got lots of things to do sort of state, which doesn't really help and get you into that rest and digest state. For those of you that know about this, we're working with the vagus nerve in this case, and the vagus nerve, and we'll definitely talk about this in the future episode for sure. But the vagus and a whole block dedicated to GI health, but the vagus nerve is essentially a nerve where there is a communication. It's a communication highway for your bacteria to talk to your brain. So it's a really, really cool thing. As we start to learn more about your bacteria and the gut and all those things, and because we have microbiomes not just in the gut, but we have them all over. You have them in your mouth, you have them on your skin. They're everywhere, and that's a really important thing, and it's part of how we keep our immune system in balance. And also on top of that, a lot of our genetic material, a lot of what makes us who we are actually has a lot to do with the bacteria in our gut. And so there's something really important to note there with that gut to brain axis and that communication pathway of that vagus nerve, that there's a lot of things that the gut can be doing to influence who we are, literally, and how we experience our day to day. There's one more thing I want you to take away on this episode is that I want you to remember these 4 steps when it comes to repairing and healing the gut. Number 1 is that you want to work first on an elimination or removal phase of any problematic things that are going on in the gut. So that might look like an overgrowth of bacteria. That might look like parasites or candida. There's a lot of different things that can be going on in the gut that can cause problems. The second phase is then you'll want to replace anything needed. That might be digestive enzymes, couple of different things that are happening there. And that's also a really good time to maybe add in that L-glutamine, start fixing leaky gut. Do those things first. And then afterwards, then you can start adding in probiotics and prebiotics. And then after that, or along the way, you can still be working on things like stress, sleep, exercise, omega-3s, and any other nutrients that might be helpful for, restoring that back to balance. So that's not just a throw a probiotic in and let's see how you do. I have something special for you today. I hope that was really helpful. What you can do is I have a new course coming out that I'm very, very excited about. And I know that it's going to have a huge impact on a lot of people's lives. You can get on the waitlist today for my very new course called Gut Health for Sports Performance. What we talked about today was a lot of areas where GI health, especially if you're experiencing issues with your gut health, can be problematic. But there are also scenarios where even if you don't have symptoms in your gut, there are scenarios where your gut health can actually improve your sports performance. So being on the wait list means that you'll get access before it releases to everyone else, to the public. You'll get an exclusive bonus, or potentially two, only for those on the wait list. And you'll also get an early adopter discount. So it's a win-win-win across the board. If you have dealt with any type of GI related symptom, if you've dealt with GI distress in the past, if it's caused a lot of frustration for race day, and if you are wanting to learn more, get it, at least just getting a start for what you should be looking for, what you can be doing. There's going to be lots of things that you can apply right away that will help you at least get started on your gut health if you're just not quite ready to make that leap and that step to working with somebody on it. This online course is going to be exactly what you want. So sign up you can get on that wait list at drkirstin.com/gut health. The link is in the bio, but is drkirstin.com/gut health. And I hope to see you on that wait list. As I said, when it launches, you'll be the first one in, and there will be a lot of things for you as a gift for being an early adopter and for being on that wait list. So I hope to see you there. And thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care.